Let's start from the top. Florida State gets a 4-star commit yesterday. Amari Clemens. He's 5'10", 190 pounds. 4-star on the composite, like we just mentioned, from Mariana High School, Mariana, Florida. Just about an hour away from Tallahassee. 2026 kid, number 294 overall on 247's composite, number 24 overall running back, number 47 player in the state of Florida. A big pickup for Florida State to just keep him home, courted by the other 2 big schools in the Big Three and then other schools outside of that as well. One that I don't think Florida State ever had a ton of, I don't want to say concern, but like they needed to do what they needed to do to get it done. But they were on him. It made him feel very comfortable once his mom got on campus, once his family was around. I think that was a big deal. And so picking him up is a big deal. I don't protect Clemens as just the, I don't think this is Dalvin Cook 2.0, but a really solid player who ran the ball very effectively, 1,880 yards on just 153 carries. That's over 12 yards a touch. He had 34 touchdowns, which is just insane. Obviously a man among boys where he is running. 14 receptions, almost 250 yards there, and 3 touchdowns out of the backfield catching passes. Again, both rivals involved, which I think makes it kind of fun, kind of unique. You certainly want to take care of business when rivals are involved. We've seen guys go from Tallahassee to Florida. Florida just picked up a kid in the 2025 class that was a Tallahassee native. And so I do think keeping talent home is a priority when they are that close. I understand that we'll get comments that say nothing matters until they sign. I get it. I don't even know how much it matters once they sign, just to be very honest with you, in today's college football, the way that guys can enter the portal, the way they don't even have to enter the portal. They can literally just unenroll and then re-enroll in a new school. So I get all those comments. For the large part, you are going to have guys flip out of your class. You are going to flip guys out of other classes. For the most part, 80% or so of guys stay committed once they're committed. And so, yeah, you're going to, rather than be committed, than try to flip them later. So it is a win for Florida State. I get it. Doesn't matter until they sign. But again, I'm telling you, it doesn't even matter once they sign. The way that guys transfer, the way that they go in, it's a win for Florida State. You add to a top 10 class with another 4-star. You lost a commit yesterday as well, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But you're able to maintain a top 10 class, at least for now, right? Long way to go in 2026. I don't even know that 2025 is done just yet. And I know it's really, really early for recruiting. And it's maybe hard to get excited about that after the product that was just put out on the field this year. But I do think this is a win for Florida State. It needs to continue to be the way that Florida State moves in keeping guys that are local-ish, like within an hour, home in Tallahassee, and a good player. Like, I don't think you're just getting a slouch, right? A top 300 kid, one of the better players in the state of Florida, talent-rich state, one of the better running backs, and a 4-star on the composite. I think that's a big deal. It does feel like, and I don't want to make any grand observations because of one commitment, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a renewed energy on the trail. It feels like there is a little bit more excitement with some of the hires. It feels like there's a little bit more of an effort that's being put forth. I think you felt that not only in the portal, but the way that they closed on the recruiting trail late in the season. And then what they've done here, even adding to the 2025 class. Obviously, Chaston Brown committed. You've gotten some guys that have signed with, or committed and will sign with you here in the early signing period for the end of the 2025 class. It feels like the energy is a little bit different. I'm not telling you that everything's fixed, everything's changed, every recruiting woe that we've ever had is somehow solved. I don't want to give that impression that I just think every problem that we've ever had is fixed. We'll talk about a decommit here in just a moment. But I do think the energy on the trail feels a little bit different. I think it feels a little bit better than it did maybe a year ago at this time. And hopefully that continues to trend up. There is a very long way to go in this class. I'm not telling you it's going to be top 10. I think that top 15 is pretty realistic this year. I think you should improve upon what you did last year. I still think it's impressive that you signed the number 19 class, only having 2 wins. Obviously, that's pretty unheard of. Now, it's pretty unheard of to have 2 wins at Florida State as well. So that's not the only thing that we could maybe point to. But I do think it's a big deal that Florida State signed a top 20 class with how poor their on-field performance was. Nobody else in the top 20 had just 2 wins. And so you would think that if Florida State can get up over 6 wins this year, they could ideally move that up into that top 15 range. Appreciate Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar, for their support. Again, if you're in Fulton, Maryland, Modesto, California, if you're in Warner Robins, Georgia, or anywhere near those locations, make sure you stop in. Let them know you heard about them here on Double Fries No Slaw, specifically the morning show. We appreciate them for their support, all that they do for not only us, but FSU athletics. Excited about their new location opening up in Florida and getting some of their coffee in your hands. I know we've been saying that for a while, all season. It will happen this year. It will happen in 2025. So we appreciate them for their support. I think if Florida State could, coming off of a 2-win year, if the very next year they could sign a top 12 class, to me, that would be a pretty big success. That's not competing for national championships. That's not competing to go to the playoff. That's not going to be enough, in my opinion, to have long-term sustained success, right? Like you need to be in that top 5, that top 10 range. But if Florida State could put together a top 12 class this year and then continue to build on that and maybe get up in the top 10 in the 27 class and beyond, then I think you're kind of moving back in that right direction. I don't know that Norvell has 5 years to get this thing fixed. And so what he does in the portal is what's going to matter for the short term. But if he is able to start to get this thing trending back in the right direction, you are going to need a base of good recruiting talent to continue to get this thing to tick up. And so my goal for 2026, recruiting class would be around 12th. If that ends up at 13, 14, even 15, I'm not sweating that so much. If you could maybe push toward that top 10 because you take a bigger class than you did last year, certainly not going to complain about that. But if you can be around that 12th, you're probably going to be second in the ACC, maybe third worst case. But you're probably going to be top 2 in the ACC. And to me, that's what Florida State's goal kind of needs to be at this point, right? You'd love to sign the number 1 class. There's no doubt about that. But your goal needs to be getting back to the top of the ACC. Right now, obviously nowhere close to that. Miami, Clemson, kind of in an upper echelon. But there's no reason that within a year or 2, Florida State couldn't be number 3 in that conference, or maybe even overtake Miami to get to number 2 based on how this year for them goes and going forward. So feels like a different kind of energy on the trail. I'm not buying fully. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid again or anything like that, but it does feel a little bit better than where we were maybe a year ago. Running back recruiting, I'll be honest with you, I've been kind of critical of Yak. I don't necessarily, I think he's done fine. I think Florida State could have potentially improved there? Yes, but at the end of the day, you kind of give flowers when they're due. I do think that Yak has done a good job of getting local kids. Obviously got Danzy as well. Obviously Cam Davis, huge FSU guy, credit there where credit's due. Byron Lewis was a massive win for this staff. And so I do think that some of the criticism or some of the questions around Yak may be answered a little bit more as he continues to get guys. I don't want to buy this guy a new Lamborghini because he got a local kid to stay home, but it's better than the alternative, right, of him letting him go somewhere else, especially to a rival potentially. I'd like to see another running back added to this class. I wouldn't be surprised if they added another running back to this class. And so we'll see, right? Like get me 2 blue chip running backs, and then you're probably back in the good graces. So excited for Clemens. Excited to have him as part of this class. And again, a long way to go. I know the comments will say it doesn't matter until they sign. I get all that, but I am glad that he's in this class.